Recording live in the Lucky Number 7 Lounge. This is Dine, Drink Vegas, the podcast. By and for everybody stuck at home, wishing they were in the land of neon lights and bad decisions. I'm your host, John, also known as the Baller of the Budget, and you've stumbled across episode number 97, where we're going to bring you some Las Vegas news, and Bill gets his chance to torture me with his booze. Before we can get into any of that amazing top shelf premium and free Las Vegas travel content, we've got to introduce the founder of Dine, Drink Travel and Dine, Drink Vegas himself, the high roller formerly of the High Plains, the leader in the luxury lounge, the Alabama slammer, the man who's sitting with his knees oddly akimbo and making me uncomfortable at this Google Meet call. Of course, I only mean Bill. Good evening, Bill. How are you, sir?
I'm good, and this is the first time in the history of our relationship I've ever made you feel uncomfortable.
No, unfortunately it isn't, but we're going to roll with it tonight. Bill, normally I run us through the drink of the day because normally that's part of my show responsibilities, but tonight was your turn. So why don't you tell us first the story of how you found this drink, and then tell the listeners how they might go about making one.
So, the drink of the day is called the Cherry Smash, which was invented at a bar in Alabama called The King. I was drinking there with my wife, and to be clear, I don't know exactly how to make the exact drink they did. I just saw the list of ingredients, and my bartender showed me the bottle of tequila she was using. So, the amounts are approximate in an attempt to recreate the same drink she made me. But what the menu card said was that it contained Gran Centenario tequila, lime juice, Luxardo syrup, and coconut puree. Also, the drink that came out had a dehydrated lime wedge on top. So I mixed it to come to something that was pretty darn close to what they made in the bar. And John, I'm really going to be curious to hear what you would change. But I used 2 ounces of Centenario Plata tequila. She showed me that is precisely the tequila she used. So the clear Centenario. I used a half ounce of Luxardo syrup, a half ounce of coconut cream, a quarter to a half of a lime, depending, squeeze, depending on the size of the lime. By the way, listeners, if you're new to the podcast, welcome. One of the rules John and I have is that when you're putting citrus in a cocktail, you always squeeze it fresh rather than using that horrible stuff out of a plastic bottle in the grocery store. A lime wedge, and 1 large rock. And depending on what kind of a mood you're in, you can either shake it, but most of the time, I just build it in the glass and then stir. I insert the large ice cube, and I put the lime wheel or wedge on top. And John, I think this is delicious, and it's a little sweeter than I would prefer as I constructed it. But there is such a smoky undertone from the tequila, it cuts out a lot of the sweetness, and I like it very much. But you were telling me before the show, John, that you may have a slightly different opinion.
So I'm going to agree with you on flavor. This drink actually tastes good, and if I were blindfolded, I would be happy. But here's the thing. The coconut puree and the Luxardo syrup, and I did make a homemade coconut puree, because that's what the recipe called for, and I didn't have store-bought coconut cream. It makes a color. If anybody remembers seeing a classmate get sick at school, and then the custodian would put that powder on it, and it would turn a gray-pink color, that. And it doesn't help that my blender did not get all of the coconut bits thoroughly pureed. So there's a little bit of coconut floating in this opaque, pinkish gray fluid. I'm going to be honest, Bill. I think if we had made this with coconut flavored syrup, say something like Torini syrup or one of the brands of syrup you might buy to sweeten your morning coffee, I think if we'd used a coconut flavored syrup that was clear instead of actual coconut product, and we had let the color come from the Luxardo juice, I think I'd be a very happy camper. It's basically a cherry lime margarita with a hint of coconut. Flavor profile is great. I'm not putting a picture of this on Twitter because I would have to put a trigger warning for people who have a sensitive gag reflex because the color is bluntly off-putting. But as long as I don't look, it's good.
I love the fact that for once in our relationship, you're drinking one of my drinks that you don't enjoy. I will also say that the color of mine is different than what you described. Mine is a creamy pink with no hint of gray at all. Now, part of that was because I used the prepared coconut. Um, I don't know that at the King they always know what words mean. Like they call it a smash, and there is no smashed cherry in it. I don't know
No.
exactly what coconut she used, but I think it was something very much like this cream because this has got the same creamy consistency it had at the bar. Also, the King is dark, right? Like it is a dark bar where you can't see things. But I'm looking at mine right now, and it is a bright Valentine's Day pink. So there must be something slightly different in the different kinds of coconut we use, but mine looks kind of pretty, not particularly masculine, but whatever. I've been married for 24 and a half years. Masculine's no longer a talent I have.
Yeah, the Coco Lopez probably would have worked out better. It said coconut puree. I made a coconut puree from scratch. Bill, you can see this color. Chum bucket comes to mind.
So again, though, I go back to them not necessarily knowing what words mean. The printed recipe card said coconut puree. I don't think that's what they used, right?
No,
They
I know
use
they
that.
didn't because you would have noticed. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
So no,
Coco Lopez in yours and probably theirs.
my drink is delicious and I enjoy it. And for the first time in the last 5 or 10 episodes, John, I'm going to go make me another when we're done recording.
And I have a pour of Old Dominic bonded Tennessee whiskey that I'm about to start drinking. But I will say, don't use a fresh coconut puree. That's where things went wrong. Use Coco Lopez, or better yet, use a clear coconut syrup. I like Jordan Skinny because I got the Beatus and there's no sugar. You can do Torini. There's like 20 brands out there that make coconut syrup. Do a coconut syrup like you would for coffee so that you don't risk this. Oh, no. Yeah. If it didn't look bad, I would be happy.
Understood. Well, at least you enjoy how it tastes. John, speaking of how drinks taste, should we move on to the dining and drinking news from Las Vegas?
Yes, we shall. In our first dining and drinking news story, Chris Holmes, who tweets at 710 Suited, shared footage of the upstairs bar area at the new Five Guys in the Boulevard shops on the Strip. The bar does look amazing, so you can go get about any competent cocktail you want to go with your Five Guys burger and fries. But the view of that upper deck overlooking the Strip is also equally impressive. Bill, I know you've lived around Five Guys. Generally, you and I have the same rule that we don't eat at places in Vegas we can get at home because you're in Vegas. Try something new. I don't think I eat dinner there, but I might pop by for a cocktail. Did you get to see the footage?
I did not, but I'm intrigued. I might actually stop by for like a drunken midnight snack. I think that's the whole this feels here. What is hard for me is to pair an upscale cocktail bar with a Five Guys burger shop. Because if you're going to have alcohol with Five Guys, that strikes me as a beer, maybe a plain pour of a cheap bourbon or something. That doesn't seem like a place where I'd put a cocktail bar.
I don't know. I think I can get away with it, especially if I'm just eating the seasoned fries. Also, Bill, what I heard was, never mind. I was going to make a really, yeah, you were gonna fill your hole with Five Guys. Anyway, we should move on from that. Bill, why don't you read the next story?
I could, or I could just let you keep trying to dig your way out of that hole, John. Okay.
Okay. Vegas Publicity says Hofbrauhaus Las Vegas is extending National Bratwurst Day, which falls on August 16th, into a week-long celebration running August 16th through 23rd. And boy, it's always good when you can extend your bratwurst. The celebration marks the return of their legendary I wish I took German in high school. Giganschitz Bratwurst, a 2-foot-long cheese-stuffed brat that pairs perfectly with your favorite German beer. Bill, what German beer would you drink with the Giganschitz Brats?
Gigantische brat?
I don't know.
You can't pronounce giant brat in any language, John.
I can't. I apparently can't.
And unfortunately, I don't know my German beers well enough. It would be some fairly light and crisp Pilsner. They have several excellent ones on the menu at Hofbrauhaus. But yeah, it's I would just tell the waitress what I liked, have her bring it to me, and hope she didn't paddle me at the end of the experience.
As long as you don't order Jaeger, I think that's the order of the day. Me personally, I think I'm going for Dunkelweiss, the dark wheat beer. That's one of my favorites that they keep on hand.
Fair. Well, in other news, in other news, the Palms is planning 3 WNBA Las Vegas Aces watch parties, complete with food and drink specials. August 9th will be a pool party with lots of drink specials, including $6 shots of Jack Daniels. August 23rd will be at the William Hill Sportsbook, again with many drink specials, including some $5 draft beers. And finally, in September, Ghost Bar will host a range of drink specials similar to the 2 previous events. On all 3 nights, guests can win luxury accommodations, including a cabana and a $200 food and beverage credit. John, I'd actually be into this. Like, that's the thing I would go out of my way to do if I was going to be in Las Vegas. How about you?
Sure. I mean, it sounds like a good time. I like watching just about any sport in Vegas, so long as I've been over to the sport book and I have a couple of tickets on the line. I'm not a huge WNBA fan, but if I've got, say, a bet on the winning team, a bet on the over-under, something like that, just something to keep my interest up. Yeah.
Huh. Yeah, no, I appreciate you putting that on there, and I'm going to start looking for more events like that. So what's going on in entertainment and sports news?
August 5th through 8th, so pretty much as this podcast drops, STLV Trek to Vegas, a convention from Creation Entertainment, will warp into the Rio with William Shatner, Brent Spiner, Jerry Ryan, Gates McFadden, Michael Dord, Anson Mount, Kate Mulgrew, and many more Trek alumni. I forgot to mention Jonathan Frakes, who's both a Trek actor and Trek director. Bill, let's be honest, you and I, neither one got dates at junior high because we like stuff like Star Trek. Would you like to go to this? And if so, which of these cast members, besides Jerry Ryan, we get it, would you most like to get an autograph from?
I'm confused by your use of the phrase cast members other than Jerry Ryan. Were there other people on the show?
There actually were, yes.
Huh. What were their roles?
It doesn't matter. By the way, did you watch season 3 of Star Trek Picard? She came back for that one. Actually, she was in seasons 2 and 3.
No, and you have failed me as my friend for not telling me that was a thing. To answer your question, anybody but William Shatner, because he's done so much terrible acting. I kind of don't want to talk to the guy. I kind of want to say Michael Dorn because Lieutenant Worf was amazing.
Yeah. Anson Mount too, just because also I want to know how he feels about the whole terrible Marvels and Humans miniseries that he was in, because that's got to be a disappointment for him. I know he's asking Kevin Feige for another chance to play that. Hey, Bill, this is turning into a sci-fi podcast. Why don't you read us a Vegas story?
So, John, somehow we've gotten to this point in the podcast without quoting Scott at Vital Vegas, and it is time to rectify that situation because Scott tweeted about the rumored Elton John hologram show supposedly planned for the Hard Rock. Scott's theory is that since Hard Rock won't deny the rumor, it is almost certainly true. John, do you buy that logic? The fact that they're not denying the rumor means it's probably a thing?
I'm not sure about that logic, but I will say it's a rock and roll themed casino. They need some classic rock shows. They've already kicked the Beatles Love Show out of there from Cirque. So my guess is if it's not this, it'll be something very much like it. And why not Sir Elton? Do you have a favorite Elton John song?
I do not. I'm just trying to figure out how a hologram show would even work.
Oh, they've done these for other performers. They literally, like, as long as you're not actually on stage with a hologram, it works from a crowd distance. You can replicate performances throughout the artist's career. You can jump between different costumes, which would be really important for somebody like Elton John, who's known for a stage wear. I think this is a good match, and you preserve it. Like, no matter what happens to Sir Elton over the years, you've got that hologram forever.
I would go see it mostly just because that theater became one of my favorite moments in Vegas where we lost my brother-in-law, Mark, God rest his soul, for the first of many times.
Well, what remains to be seen, though, is how much of that theater that was in the Mirage is still standing there, and that's not a Elton John uh, reference. But even if they did keep that particular venue, whether this would be in that room or a purpose-built theater just for the hologram performance. So I'm kind of interested to see how that works out too.
Fair enough. Well, what else is going on, John?
Scott also reports that celebrated variety show Absinthe at Caesar's Palace will go dark from November 16th to 29th. Spiegel World, the company behind the successful show, says they are using the F1 race window as a chance to renovate their show space, which, Bill, if you're not aware, is a giant tent out in front of Caesar's that also has a hamburger place that's named like No Pants or something like that, but it's supposed to be good.
All right. That goes back, though, to one of my central complaints about Formula One. It creates a window when other businesses effectively can't function. So, sure, they might as well shut down and do renovations or whatever. But yeah, I guess I'm not reading this as a story about that so much as I am about one more reason why I hate Formula One.
I will say this. I would go to Vegas during Formula One, even though I have no interest in the race. That's a chance to go stay on Fremont Street or go explore some of the off-strip properties. Go stay at South Point. Go stay at Red Rocks. There's a lot of casinos neither of us have been to. I would go during F1, but I don't want to go to the Strip during F1.
Okay, I see your logic. Well, in other news about times when I very much do want to go to Vegas, it's to see the Las Vegas Raiders, who are currently underway with training camp in Henderson under the direction of new head coach Clint Kubiak. According to the New York Times, the team has now transitioned into padded practices, and it looks like Fernando Mendoza is back and fully involved in those practices. John, what are you expecting? You are the NFL fan in this pair. What are you expecting out of the Raiders this season?
I think they're going to be improved. I don't see them making the playoffs, or if they do, just barely. I think this is a rebuilding year. But if they can get that young man some really good snaps, get him comfortable with the NFL, make a few more additions over the next offseason, I think we could see a competitive Raiders. And the NFL is, I'm not a Raiders fan. The NFL is better when the Raiders are good.
So, how good is the Raiders' offensive line? Like, is Mendoza going to die at any point this season because his left tackle failed to block?
He won't die, but he's going to need to be nifty on his feet. Let's put it that way. I'm pretty sure defenses would sack me 7 times a game behind this line at a minimum, but a young, nimble rookie should be able to dodge most of the traffic.
You know what? Here's to hoping, because I would like to see that man survive his first season.
Well, speaking of survival, somehow the legacy newspaper in Las Vegas, the Reporter Journal, the RJ, the Review Journal, not only still exists, but occasionally breaks its own news stories instead of just stealing stuff from Scott and other influencers out there. They report that Caesars and Vici, the company that owns the actual dirt under all of the Caesars and MGM properties, are collaborating on a possible NBA arena behind the Horseshoe. Of course, the location of the arena will depend on the preference of the eventual ownership group, and leading contender Bill Foley, man, there's a lot of typos in this, of the Golden Knights wants both teams to play at T-Mobile. So obviously they're going to be rooting against Bill Foley becoming the owner. Also, there are several other proposed arena locations around the valley in the works. So take this one with a grain of salt. Bill, do you have a preferred outcome of a venue for the team?
I don't have a preferred outcome. What I have is a question about why you would do anything other than co-locate, because that's just so much cheaper. I mean, even if somebody who's not Bill Foley winds up buying the NBA team, if you can co-locate, that saves the NBA team a ton of construction costs and gets Foley some new rental revenue. I would be inclined to do that. Like, what would the logic be behind building a second arena, John?
Well, there's two things to keep in mind, especially if you have a two different groups owning the NBA franchise and the hockey team. With different ownership, you sometimes do have a headache scheduling both teams effectively. That's part of what happened with Dallas and the American Airlines Center. The relationship between the Dallas Stars and the Dallas Mavericks has soured over the years. So sharing a venue can be complicated when you don't have shared ownership of the franchise. The other reason is not so much what the team would want, but if I'm Caesars and I see MGM printing money because even locals who aren't staying on property, but they go down to see a Golden Knights game, and before or after the game or both, they're eating and drinking at MGM bars and restaurants. Caesars want some of that. They don't want it co-located, and they might make a really good deal to other ownership groups to say, hey, we'll offset some of that expense of building this arena for you. Heck, we'll offset all of it. We'll make you a sweetheart deal being our tenant because we're going to make our money not renting this space to you, but when your fans come down to watch your game, they're going to dine and drink and maybe gamble with us.
Okay, that makes sense. I do worry about those nights. So if it's in a separate location, there will inevitably come some night when there's events in both places, and that is going to be a crowded Las Vegas Strip. But, it seems like it would also be a lot of fun.
Indeed.
In other news about things which will be fun, the Las Vegas Convention and Visitor Authority reports that Tim McGraw will perform at the Forum at Caesars Palace on October 23rd and 24th, and again on November 6th and 7th. So, John, we've talked about this before on the podcast. You have a preference for a much older form of country music. Is this a show you would be interested in at all?
I mean, I know some of his music, especially the older stuff. I've never been the world's biggest Tim McGraw fan. I don't hate him. I do like new country too, but it's stuff like Charlie Crockett. It's definitely red dirt country. It's definitely not what they're playing on Nashville top 40 stations. I can take or leave Tim McGraw, but if I'm in Vegas and I can afford the tickets, I'm sure that's going to be a really good show.
Yeah, no, that is the thing I don't know. It quite rises to the point of planning a trip around, but it's certainly something I would pay attention to and would absolutely go if I was in town.
I would think this is more your speed than mine. Bill, how about we jump into some casino and hospitality news?
Let's do it. TravelZork reports that Bellagio is considering adding more villas to the property to offer more extremely high-end accommodations. Presently, they have 8 such units on the property. They're also considering adding more lakeside dining options. Both moves are a sign that MGM's flagship luxury location wants to land more whales as a means to boost revenue. John, how many more whales are out there who aren't already going to the Bellagio?
That's a really good question. Like, I understand the notion that one millionaire is probably spending more than 100 of me. And I get that. And I get the Vegas properties want to go after them. But there are literally millions of me in America. There are tens of millions of me in America. And that volume starts to add up. And I think Vegas should be doing a both and strategy. And to MGM's credit, they are, because they're offering all-inclusive packages down at Luxor and Excalibur. They're doing this at Bellagio. I will say what I want is that sweet spot where a guy like me could pretend to be a millionaire for a couple of days. And that's the piece of Vegas that's fading away. It's truly the baller side of baller on a budget.
Yeah, and that makes me sad. I would love to just be allowed to tour one of these villas some point because I can't ever imagine having the money to pay for one of them.
Oh gosh, no, that's like the time that I had booked a plane room in New York, and I got an email saying they'd put me at the mansion at MGM Grand. I was so bummed when that turned out to be fake news. It would have been nice if I'd gotten that upgrade. Alas, it was a glitch in the computer system.
Indeed. Well, what else is going on in MGM world, John?
Fox 5 News reported that on July 31st, the MGM board has formed a special committee to examine Barry Diller's proposed acquisition of the shares he doesn't already own. Now, we said this was going to happen, about 4 episodes ago, Bill? We didn't break that news. We stole it from other people, but we did say it. Diller is obviously not a member of this committee. Bill, how are you feeling about the odds of Diller taking this thing private?
So, better than I did over the last couple of episodes. So Diller's got a pretty obvious conflict of interest because he owns whatever it is, something like 26% of the existing shares, which means he owes a duty to the existing shareholders in that role. He wants to buy the rest. This is the only way this could work. And it sounds like MGM is starting to focus on the business end of this transaction, which in my mind makes it a little more likely that it'll actually happen. That is not the same thing as being a done deal, but I think it does make it a little bit more likely. And I would love to have that as a counterweight to Caesars and its private ownership structure.
Yeah, I don't think you need a committee to say hit the bricks, so it means they're at least thinking about it.
Yeah, no, they absolutely are. Well, John, we've got a new segment this week. We've talked before about Las Vegas as a real place where people actually live. So we've got a couple of stories this week, and Las Vegas is a real place news. And the first one, according to MarketWatch, home prices nationally are up year over year. However, they are down 1.9% in Las Vegas, which is worse than anywhere else in the country. What that suggests is that Las Vegas is economically hurting. John, can you draw a line from that to the decreased tourist numbers we've talked about before?
Possibly, although most of the properties, locals focused properties and tourist properties are bringing in good profits. It may have to do with people being spooked off by, a lack of water, and that's been in the news a lot. It may be that home prices have been historically high, and that may have hurt the market over time. I will say for somebody like me who's a poorly paid public servant who occasionally dreams of ending my career in Las Vegas so I could double dip on some government pensions. If this keeps up, I may have to twist my wife's arm. Not literally, don't call the police. It's a figure of speech. In order for us to consider retiring in Nevada so I can work the last 5 years of my career to get vested and double dip on some pensions. Bill, would you ever live in Las Vegas?
It is too hot. Also, I can't tell you how much I've enjoyed living in Alabama over the last couple of years now. Water falls from the very sky here. I think they call it rain, which is not a thing
What's
you know
that?
about. Yeah, I know. It's weird where you live.
Yeah.
But that means that everything on the ground here is green. And John, I'm not even sure it's paint or AstroTurf or nothing. I think they call it grass and trees. But they don't have those in Vegas. I like it here. Also, I guarantee you that here in Alabama, we can fry a chicken leg or a pork chop better than they can in Las Vegas. Las Vegas will always remain a place which I simply visit.
Yeah, well, rain is overrated because I hate humidity. I don't like it when the air gets thick. And we have grass in far west Texas. It's just the kind they throw you in jail for, so I have to avoid it because of that aforementioned public service gig. Bill, we've got another story going on, and we are not a political podcast, so we are going to avoid opining over the current occupant of the White House. But we do want to note that President Trump is scheduled to visit Las Vegas this week. In fact, he is literally landing as we're recording. So between the time when we record and by the time the episode drops, the visit will have taken place and concluded. Now, for any of you out there who have ever lived in a town where a presidential or a president or vice president has visited, we hope the traffic wasn't too bad and that you were able to get everything done that you need. Bill, you were in El Paso when Vice President Gore came through. How was that?
It was terrible. So I attended grad school at the University of Texas, El Paso in the late 90s. Vice President Gore came to town and traffic just shut down. Like nobody could get anywhere for most of a day. They had the hospital blocked off just in case there was some tragedy which impacted the vice president, so he could make sure to get to it. And there was some provision for emergency care. And I intentionally used the example of President Trump and Vice President Gore on purpose because of what you said. We're not a political podcast. The point here is that when a president or a vice president of the United States comes to your town, it jacks things up seriously. And Las Vegas, as I've said twice on this podcast already and a million times before now, is a real place where real people actually live. And some folks' days are going to be harder starting right now, going for until the president, elects to go back home. And it's also going to impact the traffic in and out of the airport. So, folks, by the time you listen to this, I hope your travel was smooth, both getting to and from Vegas as well as going around town.
Indeed. We always want travel in and out of Las Vegas to be smooth and easy for tourists and locals alike. I will tell you, Bill, the last time my wife and I went to Dallas to see our in-laws, we were driving across I-30, and that was a mistake because it was during World Cup, and it was not any of our dignitaries, but there was a motorcade of some foreign dignitaries making their way out to the Death Star, by which I mean the Dallas Cowboys Stadium there in Arlington. And that official motorcade effectively shut down I-30 for about an hour, and I had to navigate my way across the Metroplex on some very touch and go surface streets. It was not what I would call fun, and that's for some foreign dignitary. You can just imagine when it's an American.
Yeah, I feel bad for anyone who has to wait for whoever the important person happens to be.
Well, let's hope it goes off without a hitch for all parties involved, that the president is safe and sound and gets out of town smoothly, and that the people of Las Vegas, Nevada can enjoy their town with limited traffic interruptions. Bill, I think that about brings this episode to a close.
I think it does. Should we tell people where they can find us, John?
Let's shall.
So, everyone, you can find us on YouTube at Dine, Drink, Travel, where we bring you short and focused videos which help you plan your next trip. We used to have a YouTube channel called Dine, Drink, Vegas. That content is going to Dine, Drink, Travel, but your favorite hotels in Las Vegas, your executive lounges, things like airline flights, also a lot of high-end travel to places which aren't Las Vegas, including my trips to Ireland. You can also see us on essentially every social media platform at Dine, Drink, Travel, but the most important of those is probably X, because that's where you can find John.
I'm at Dine Drink John. You can jump on there to see my pictures of various cocktail and booze concoctions. I've got a new backdrop on my bar. I'm proud of it. I'm posting booze pictures. I'm sure I'm also going to talk your ears off about my beloved Dallas Cowboys, who are going to give me false hope and disappoint me yet again. We would love it if you would drop either of us a line on any of those platforms. We're so glad you took the time to listen today. We want you to like and subscribe, copy a link to this episode, share it on your own social media, give it to a friend who's planning a trip to Vegas or an enemy that hates listening to old fat white guys drink and talk. Write the URL on the bathroom stall wall, whatever you have to do to spread the word about this podcast so we can keep bringing you more top shelf, amazing, and free Las Vegas travel information. And until the next episode, thanks for listening. Happy travels. I'm still trying to find, where did that stupid cherry go? I cannot see through this liquid. All right, are we ready?
I think we're ready.
All right, I have opinions. Here we go. Countdown. I'll save it for air. Here we go. We'll do it live. All right. 5, 4.